Welcome to the wonderful world of dance, bringing you exclusive interviews with top dancers and choreographers and reviews of the world's best companies across the globe. You can find lots more on our website at thewonderfulworldofdance.com.
Hi, this is Savannah Saunders from The Wonderful World of Dance, and today I am so excited to be speaking with Lovette, Principal Dancer with the New York City Ballet. It's so lovely to talk with you all the way from New York. Here I am in London. So let's go right back to the beginning. Tell us about how old you were when you started dancing, and why did you start dancing in the first place?
So I started around the age of 10. And I started because my cousin danced. I wanted to be like her. I idolized her a lot. And my aunt owned a dance store in California. And so I was dancing around the store one day. I would hang out with my cousins there and play. And this amazing woman saw my feet. I had my foot up on a ballet bar. And she said, "You have the body for dance. You have the feet for dance. Do you dance?" And I told her that I didn't, that my parents couldn't afford the classes. And she said, "Well, I'm a dance studio owner. I can pay for it for a week and see if you like it or you take to it." And so I got my aunt and I worked in the store and I got my dance clothes and I was taking ballet almost the next day. So it was very exciting and abrupt. It happened really fast. I loved it immediately, and that week turned into a month and then a year of free classes.
But so you didn't dream like many young girls do to be a ballet dancer, and as you say, it came on really quickly as this wonderful person came into your life. How did that change things for you when you were so young, in terms of changing your trajectory?
I guess I didn't really think about my future much at that age. I wasn't really thinking about what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to live in New York City. And I knew I loved dance a lot, but I didn't know that dance was what I wanted to do. And I feel like because ballet was my first class, I never went to school. I was homeschooled my whole life. So I feel like because dance was my first exposure into a class situation where I had a teacher and other students and I wanted to do well, I took to it that way, and I liked the perfectionist element. I also loved the movement. I feel like I loved moving. I had a lot of energy. I've always had so much energy my whole life, so I felt like that was a really good outlet for me. And I was very introverted and shy, so I didn't have to really say anything. I didn't have to speak up ever, and I could still have so much fun, and I could get all of my emotions out and practice this perfectionist gene that I had in me. And it was just kind of a really, really wonderful fit for my personality.
And it must have been very different coming from a homeschool environment and suddenly finding yourself in, as you say, a very structured and you took it quite seriously, a very serious ballet environment. What was that like for you?
It was a shock at first. I wasn't around kids very often. I just had my family and the neighborhood kids around. So that was a huge transition. But not a bad one. I mean, I think I was hungry for something like that. I always wanted to go to school. I didn't always get along with the other girls right away because I was in an advanced class early on, and I was definitely the furthest behind, but also rising fast. And that wasn't popular with the kids that had been there since they were 3. So I cried a little bit and I wanted to quit sometimes, but my mom always willingly encouraged it. So I had to be rebellious and I said no. I'd cry, I'd tell her the girls were mean or the class was hard or I was sore and I'd never felt soreness before. And my mom would say, "Oh, you can quit. Let's just quit." And that was the perfect thing she could have said because I would be like, no.
Almost reverse psychology on you.
Exactly.
Sounds like your mum knew exactly what you needed to hear.
Yeah, I'm rebellious that way. I always tell my friends, tell me that I can't do it, and then I'll do it. But if you encourage me, then I'm over. Yeah, so I don't know. I always had that earnest, climb the mountain mentality.
And that mentality and your sort of internal drive landed you a place with the American Ballet School.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about moving to the Big Apple and joining this prestigious company. What was your time there like?
It was so fun and scary at the same time. I was 13 when I first went away from home. It was 5 weeks long. I hadn't been away from my family for more than a day, and that was terrifying in a lot of ways. But I took to it immediately. I loved it there. They asked me to stay when I was 13 after that summer program. And my parents and I both thought, oh, for a little bit longer, like stay for a few more weeks. We didn't really know that there was such a thing as moving away from home permanently to go to school, to dance. Like, it was so foreign to us. And yeah, my parents said no at 13. It's a little young. But I worked really hard the following year, and I was always a responsible kid, but I stayed extra responsible. I wanted my parents to know they could trust me, because I really did. I really did want to go to the School of American Ballet year round. I saw videos of it, and it was a dream. So I really wanted it realized.
And what was it like moving? You ended up boarding at the American Ballet School.
Mm-hmm.
You're training full time. How did you deal with that? I mean, that must have been quite an intense experience for you at such a young age.
There were a lot of things that were big about it. One being just being around other dancers that wanted to dance professionally as badly as I did. My local studios, I think I was the only one that really wanted to make it my life or my job. In New York, everybody did. And there was an intensity in the class. Everyone was good. I think everyone was better than me, coming from my eyes. I don't know. But it had this, I don't know, this new focus in the class that was at first very jarring. And then I started to learn to love it and I need it. Even now, I need that. I need to feel like I'm being pushed by the dancers around me. I need to feel challenged, like I'm growing or I'm reaching towards something. So that was a big transition. All of the classes were on pointe. I'd never experienced that before. My feet hurt a lot. Those first months, I was going through so many pointes. I had to pay for those myself.
And how did you, as a young student, having to come up with, buying new pointe shoes all the time?
I did odd jobs.
Tell us about these odd jobs here, so we can imagine Lauren Lovette.
The life of Lauren Lovette.
Yeah.
Well, I would do teacher assisting, where I would help levels 1 and 2. I'd fix their feet and assist the teacher. If kids were being bad, I could calm them down, just have eyes in the room, demonstrate combinations. Did that. I did hall monitoring, another thing where you keep kids quiet, mostly. Babysitting. I did a lot of babysitting. I'm good with kids. I did something called a community development assistant. And it's sort of a bridge between the RAs and the students. It's a student RA position. There are only 4. You come up with community events and programs. You get kids to attend fun Fridays.
Sounds actually really exciting,
Yeah.
and quite a great experience, I could imagine.
It was good because I had to interview for it. I had to write a whole thing down of why I wanted the job and why I deserved it. And I had to learn how to speak up, which and up until that point I wasn't terribly good at. I definitely lean more toward the introverted personality type. So that was really good for me. I had to speak up and create these events and then make them fun for people and exciting. And I ended up having a blast. I loved it. I loved the brainstorming elements. I would come up with ideas and bounce them off people, see if they were good. Then you had to make your own signs. And it was a huge part of my education. I think I really needed that interaction with other kids. And then also in a leadership position, it helped me later on.
So you spent a couple of years at the ballet school, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was there 4 years, so the end of my high school schooling, yeah.
And tell us about, you come to the end of your time in the school. Mm-hmm. What were your options then?
It was a difficult year for me, my last year in the school, because I'd reached the highest level you could be, level D, the advanced division, and I finished. I was a lead in the end of year show called Workshop, and I didn't get a job with the New York City Ballet, and 6 other girls in my class got chosen, which felt like failure to me because I'd worked really hard for that. And I didn't audition for any companies that year, so I felt like I was at this place where I was going to go back to school and repeat a level with all the younger kids. That felt like that felt disappointing. And I wasn't going to a summer program that had a major company attached. So I was getting training, but as far as career, I couldn't see it, where I would end up or if I would be a ballerina. But I went to Chautauqua summer program in upstate New York for 7 weeks, and I choreographed two pas de deux there. And they were shown on the main stage in front of a real audience, and I had live music. I had to collaborate with musicians and think about costumes, and that was very in hindsight, very, very valuable for me.
And perhaps an experience you may not have gotten quite so soon if you had gone straight into as an apprentice or straight into the corps.
I wouldn't have, and if I had gotten my apprenticeship, I would have stayed in New York and gone to the School of American Ballet for the summer. And I wouldn't have had the performance experience either, because since I started a little bit later, I was 10, 11-ish, and at the School of American Ballet, you don't perform a lot. I really only had 3 years of getting used to the stage, and that is a huge part of the job. It's not just class and rehearsal that I felt very comfortable in. It's being in front of people. And as an introverted personality, I would always freeze on stage. So it was very good for me to go to Chautauqua. We had a real amphitheater. I did Tarantella. I did the lead in Western Symphony. I danced all the time, every couple of weeks in front of people, and I learned how to perform. Not always successfully, but it was still experience. And
it's interesting that there you were, I guess, on the at a point in your career where you would have hoped to have become an apprentice, and then find yourself in a different situation, which, as you say, in hindsight, has been an amazing experience for you. And sounds like you learned a lot through that experience, but it must have been quite difficult to hear that other dancers in your class had been given company positions, but you hadn't. And it's quite hard to, even for me to hear, and I know lots of people will be listening and thinking, to hear that you may have considered giving up at one stage is quite startling, really.
Yeah, I did. yeah, it's discouraging in the moment because you can't
Yeah.
see the future. Um, and you don't know how events are lining up. You don't know where you're going. So for me, the only thing I could see in front of me was um, no,
Yeah.
the word no, or not yet, or not good enough, or weak. And I had those words in my mind often, and I felt like the pressure was getting higher, and I was burning out a little bit. I felt um, I almost did give up. I remember I called my dad um, 2 weeks. I think it was maybe not even 2 weeks before I ended up getting my apprenticeship with the New York City Ballet, asking him to give up, being like, "Dad, I don't think I'm going to do this. I don't feel like I have a future in this field. Maybe I'll move back home and do something else. I'm smart." I was like, "I'm smart. I can do anything. I can." Maybe ballet isn't the one for me. I didn't feel very happy, um, and then right before Halloween, I got my apprentice contract, and it happened so fast. Um, they tell you at night or in the evening, and then you start rehearsal the next day. So
Goodness.
I was told around 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. And
Wow.
then the next day I had rehearsal for the Nutcracker with the New York City Ballet. And you just,
So no real time to digest this
nope.
life-changing
No.
event at all. Something which you had aspired to, but it was out of your reach at that point. And then here it is, it lands on you and you have to start. That's incredible.
Exactly. And you just go and, um, yeah, then you go into survival mode and you just do it somehow. Sink or swim. Um, so the very next day I was in company class and I danced Spanish coffee, um, and then in the Nutcracker, or Spanish hot chocolate, or whatever it's called. I did that, and yeah, it was history. The rest. Um, so that was a huge transition as well. And I didn't. Apprentice year is hard. You don't feel like you're a part of the company. You feel like everybody's watching you all the time. Class is huge. You're used to maybe 25 students in a class, and then you go into a setting of 100 people, and
Wow.
it's uh, it's very different. You feel claustrophobic, like there are people around everywhere. You don't know if you can go in the combination or where you should stand at bar. You feel like you're in everyone's way. Um, it's a lot at first, and then I know my whole apprentice year, most of it, I had a head on me of some kind, covering my face. So I was a monster. I was a giant fly creature in Sleeping Beauty. I was a hound dog, dog face, every kind of mask you can wear.
So cute.
Which is probably good because I had braces at the time.
Oh, just to add to it.
Just to add to all that beauty.
But then you were given a position within the corps. Now, the corps is often described as the backbone of a ballet company. The hardest sort of working element, and quite tough. How did you find it?
Oh, I found it very freeing. I felt like as an apprentice, I couldn't dance everything I wanted to because they limit how much you can do to protect the dancers so they don't get paid a very small amount for a ton of work. So the union says you can only dance so many ballets, and the company keeps track of that, and they don't put you in ballets because they can't pay you, so they don't. But when you're in the corps, you can do anything. And maybe I just have a crazy amount of energy. I don't know, but I loved it. I couldn't wait for the schedule. I would look at it and I hoped I had the entire day of rehearsal. And I wanted to be in every ballet for the show. And I don't know, maybe it's just like the curse of the young. I loved it. I took to it right away. I think I didn't feel like there was any part too small. I danced everything as full out as you can dance it. I wasn't good at staying in line.
Oh, really?
I was not. I think a lot of my coworkers were very frustrated with me because I was so involved in the emotional elements of dancing that, I was getting my choreography wrong often. I was short and in the front, so I was the leader of the line. And if I was just freely dancing as I felt, the rest of the line, suffered. So
Perhaps that's why you were promoted. To soloist.
Yeah, they were like, she's making a lot of mistakes and she's dancing with a full spirit, so let's put her somewhere else.
I was thinking more of this wonderfully dramatic emotion and free, loveliness. But tell us about life as a soloist and what it felt like to get that promotion.
It felt even more free. It felt like that was my favorite promotion. Because of the way it was given to me. I loved that meeting with my boss.
What was that meeting like? Tell us about that.
He told me he liked my energy. He liked my spirit. He liked that I was always smiling and had good positive energy. He has a video camera in his office so he can see the stage at all times. And I danced every rehearsal like it was my last, with that kind of full out feel. And he saw that and he told me about it. And that was the first validation that I got, real validation from my boss that said, okay, so I'm doing something right. And you see it and it's not going unnoticed, and I'm going to keep it up. So that meeting went very well. And then after, being promoted to soloist, I could always dance as freely as I wanted to because I had solo roles. And it comes with its setbacks too. I mean, you don't dance as often.
Okay.
It's easy to get out of shape, or if you're not learning anything, to just feel like you're lost and not a part of the company anymore because you have to do your own work.
And how did you deal with that, going from loving being on stage and getting this great opportunity to be free as an artist, but finding that you don't have quite as much time to dance on stage? What did you end up doing?
For me, I loved dancing. In rehearsals, I would do full out all the time, but actually show time was hard for me, the actual performance. Sometimes it would be great and I would face all my fears and I would just go for it. Also not thinking of the line, but going for it. Most of the time, though, I felt like I would blow it on stage. But I didn't do it well.
Is this the fear that you had before you went on stage? Okay.
I think so. I think I struggled with stage fright. I went to therapy for almost a year. So for me, being on stage all the time was very good for me because it became normal. It normalized it. I could just get used to it. It's like practicing that scary muscle over and over and over. It becomes more common practice and you're just living your day. But as a soloist, I wasn't on stage as much and I started to feel that anxiety creeping back in, that fear of the stage. And then when I was on stage, I had to really deliver. And so I felt my anxiety rise a little bit, but also this freedom of not having to look like anybody else. So I don't know. I think they balanced each other in the end. And then I started really connecting with who I wanted to be as an artist instead of just doing things perfectly. And that definitely freed up my performance because then I felt like I could really dance because I was giving something instead of, trying to be something else. I was just being me. And that was fine up until I got injured. I had a little injury. So.
And did that take you off stage for a while? Or?
It did.
Yeah.
It was actually right before I got surgery, right before my promotion to principal. So.
That must have been tough.
Yeah, I was getting into a groove with being a soloist. I was learning a lot of new things. I was starting to rise. I felt like my performing was getting better. I was getting used to the stage, but I had this horrible pain in my foot. And I knew I had an extra bone in there. I knew it was about the size of my thumb, the tip of my thumb, and it would float. So I knew about it, and I'd been to see doctors, and they said you can dance with it if it's in a good place, but if it moves around, then you have to get a lot of therapy, and you have to really be on it and watch it. And I was just in this chronic pain that I needed to get rid of, because I was finding myself dancing recklessly. I wasn't warming up. I wasn't taking class.
Was this to avoid the pain?
To avoid the pain, I was doing the bare minimum, like exactly whatever was asked of me is what I would do, but I wouldn't do anything extra. And I felt like even what I was asked to do that I was starting to try to do wasn't working in my favor. My dancing was suffering just by avoiding pain. So I talked to my boss, and I asked if I could get this surgery, and I asked him when a good time would be, and he said, I want you to, dance a long time. So as soon as possible, but he wanted me to dance solfège, la solfège, which
Tough
was
role.
my first real full-length ballet. And it's all jumping, which is very hard on the foot. So I didn't do much else that season. I just focused on that. And I loved it. I really loved it. Sorry if you can hear my cat.
I was actually thinking it was my cat. I was like, oh.
Like, I hope it stops soon.
Keep going.
So I had this surgery on my ankle done, and after 2 weeks of being in a boot, my boss promoted me to principal dancer, and that was very confusing.
Why was it? Why did you find it confusing? Yeah.
I guess I felt like I had done things in the past that could have warranted a promotion, but getting surgery on my foot and then sitting on the couch for 2 weeks in elevation, taking pain meds, and just kind of letting myself go didn't feel like a very good time.
Not like this quintessential moment that you probably had envisaged, or similar to your soloist promotion.
Exactly.
Different.
Like I envisioned getting off stage after dancing something really hard, and my boss saying, I'm so proud of you. That performance was principal worthy. You're a principal now, or something. But it didn't happen like that. I hobbled in with my boot, and it happened very informally. He just said, you're promoted. You're not surprised. And he slapped me on the back and he left. And that was just it. So then I had these 5 months away from the stage, and a lot of it away from work, with a new title. And I didn't really know what to do with that right away. So I spent a lot of time worrying about getting back on the stage.
Coming back,
if my foot was going to be okay, but then also, am I principal worthy right now? I don't know. And I had never had a serious injury, so I didn't know how to stay in shape, really. And it was very stressful.
I can imagine.
But I did. I came back in Nutcracker, and it wasn't wonderful right away.
Okay.
But I kept working. The pain in my foot didn't go away for a little while either. It took about a year after the surgery to really feel good.
And so you've been a principal now for about 2 years, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you say you've had an injury and pain for a good year and a half of that time.
Yeah.
How are you feeling now? How's life for
Great.
you? Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I did have another problem with my other foot for a little while. which ended up being something so small. But even little things, if you avoid a little pain, it can turn into a greater pain somewhere else. And I was compensating badly. So, but yeah, I'm happy to say that both of my feet are doing wonderfully.
So tell us about your favorite roles that you've been dancing as a principal. Let's talk about some of the joys that you have in your life at the moment.
Joys in my life. So I love everything that I dance. So it's hard for me to choose special things that I love. But I love doing Juliet and Romeo and Juliet. I love pretty much any romantic role. Any dramatic role I love. Like The Cage is one of my favorite ballets to dance because it's so crazy. It's so creepy and weird, and I get to be all of those things I was so afraid of looking stupid and so afraid that other people would see. Like if my face looked weird, I was always afraid other people would think I looked ugly or stupid or weird. I just spent a lot of time insecure thinking about other people and what they were thinking. And ballets like The Cage got me out of that. So I find them these little gems of freedom, where I was forced to kind of go beyond myself, and then you're not afraid to go back there. So they're huge growths. I love those kinds of things. DGV is a really fun one. Christopher Wheeldon choreographed that on you and Royal, I believe. But it has a big lift in it. I do the central pas de deux that has the press lift where he walks the ballerina in and down stage. And I'm afraid of heights.
Oh, goodness.
Very afraid of heights. So another growth.
Another fear conquered.
Yes. Anytime I'm conquering a fear, I feel really, really good afterwards. So I've become very addicted to that feeling.
And in your these roles, and particularly you're saying you love the dramatics and the theatrical and the character extension. Tell us, do you have a particular process that you go through for preparing for each of the roles, or tell us about how that works for you?
I would love to get a good process.
Okay.
I would love that. I'm a very spontaneous person. So it's hard for me to create habits, even good ones. So pre-performance rituals, things like that, I don't have, which I'm hoping to develop this year. It's on the list. But I try to center myself somehow by connecting with who I really am and what I want to give out. So if I'm doing role like Juliet or Aurora, then I find myself in the character, and I'll get emotionally in a state of something that I know well and personally, and then I can give it to the audience. So I stay more in that realm because I'm less nervous over there. If I'm thinking about the actual emotions driving my performance, if I'm thinking about getting a turn or a lift or something technical, it's harder. But it depends on the role. It always depends on the role. Some roles, it helps me to think of a technical aspect because I know I'm going to be really flighty or really nervous and I need to not worry about emotions. So it just, I don't know. I really don't know what to say. I haven't figured out the key for a great performance every time. I don't know if it exists. So
I wanted to ask you, you sort of mentioned this throughout this wonderful discussion. You talk about sort of, looking after your body, looking after your mind, and looking after your soul, really. As I think everyone knows, it's very, very difficult and hard career because obviously you've got to take class every day, and you've got to rehearse, and you've got to perform, and it's quite difficult. How do you stay motivated, particularly through, you've been through injury and setbacks, and here you are at the sort of, top of your career. How do you make sure you take care of yourself now so that you can keep this wonderful career going even longer?
Oh, it's such a good question, because I feel like that changes depending on the trial or depending on what it is I'm going through. But mostly I have to think about why I dance, because that's a big one. There are a lot of reasons not to do it.
So why do you dance?
I dance because I feel like it's almost my contribution to the world. It feels almost spiritual to me. It's how I connect to a higher calling. And I'm not a religious person, but for me, it's almost a deeper sort of sensation than just, I don't know, articulating these perfect body movements or steps. Like it's something on a deeper level. And it's sort of, steadfast throughout all of the different changes of my life. So I believe even if ballet wasn't my career, if it wasn't my job anymore, I would still go to class, because there's something so deep rooted in who I am. And movement is an expression. And for me, I feel like it's my best expression. I don't really love speaking that much. I'm getting better at it. I don't really love it. I don't like being in front of cameras or even audiences, not that much. But there's something about the physical expression that's really just for me.
Well, let's talk about that, because I'm really interested in your choreographic work, and this new, as you say, this expression of who you are as a person, as an artist. Tell us about how you came to choreography and what it really means to you.
Well, choreography started as a dare to myself, really. I signed up when I was younger. I was 16 in school at the School of American Ballet, and there was a sign-up sheet, and I was in a time of my life where I was signing up for everything, just to face fears. That was pretty much my only aim, was to do things I was scared to do. And I didn't think I would get chosen to choreograph, but I ended up getting picked, and then it became a reality. I had to do this thing. I had to make a little ballet on people, real people, and find music and do the whole thing. And what did I want to say? And I didn't know any of those things going in. I just did it somehow, and I picked a Bach piece that I really, really found moving, and I loved the process. There were ups and downs in it, but I felt like it came kind of naturally to me, because I had never improvised before, because you don't do that in ballet. You don't. I'd never taken an improv class or anything like that, but the feeling of freedom that you get when you have the music and you can dance however it makes you feel. I really, really loved that sensation. So I started choreographing in school, and my boss recognized it as something nice. He liked what I did and asked me to make something for the summer program students in 2009 as an apprentice with New York City Ballet. And so it was the first time I got paid to make something, and I felt a different kind of pressure with that. I felt like, this is a lot more complicated than I thought. There's deadlines, and it's not just moving freely to music as you feel inspired, and there are kids involved, and there were a lot more elements to it. And I think that scared me off a little bit. I didn't feel like I had a great amount of talent in that area because I saw other choreographers that were making more amazing things than I was. So I thought I'll focus on dance. I also so badly wanted to be a ballerina, so I didn't even put that challenge in my mind to focus on two things. I didn't go to college. I didn't do anything else. I just wanted to be a ballerina. And my boss had spoken about choreography to me a couple of times throughout me being in the corps and as a soloist. And I always had the same answer, and that was, I want to be a ballerina, or I'm focusing on dance. So when he promoted me to principal, he finally said, Lauren, you're a principal now. Choreograph.
No excuses anymore.
No excuses. And I think really it was just fear, because that's the ultimate fear, because you're making, in ballet, I can give my own expression through other people's choreography, and it's not going to be criticized as much. It's going to be, maybe they won't like the way I dance it, but usually they blame the choreographer. It's very rare that they blame the dancer for the problems. They say, oh, the costumes or the lights or the music was poorly chosen or whatever. So it's the choreographer that gets the heat for those things, and it's the most exposed you are as an artist because it's your heart out there for everybody to decide if they like or not. And so I wasn't ready for that for a long time. And I don't even know, even still, if I'm ready for that, really. But I made my first ballet last year. And it was like anything else that I've talked about in this whole interview. It was a total rush of both positive and negative things. Which I guess anything that's worth doing in life has that.
Yeah.
It's part of the balance. So I had some extreme highs, and then I had a lot of moments where I thought I couldn't do it. And I really learned so much about myself when it comes to being a leader. I don't have a very good poker face, and people can see through me often, and that's not easy as a creator, because you need, you're a leader. You need to convince other people that you believe in the project, and sometimes you don't believe in the project. And if your dancers will feel that, and then they'll get insecure and say, oh, I'm not a part of something great anymore. So it's your job to keep yourself motivated, yourself inspired, and your dancers and your musicians and the lights and the everything else. So it was exciting for me because I've been reading leadership books my whole life.
Have you?
I have. I think because of my dad.
Because I was going to ask you why you had been reading leadership. Yeah, tell us about that. Like, what is your dad?
My dad's an entrepreneur, so he started a lot of businesses growing up, and I just got used to it. I was daddy's girl, so I was always in the room. He was bouncing ideas off of me since I can remember, and it was my favorite thing. I loved the respect that I felt. My dad always made me feel like my opinions mattered and they were important. And I loved if I came up with a good idea or if I came up with the solution to a problem, it just felt really good to be the contribution or the help.
And perhaps part of that creative process again, and maybe that's why it's sort of the choreography draws you in, because it's this creation that you get to go through again. Yeah,
I love making things. I've always loved making things, and it started with my dad. We cooked together also, so I was his sous chef in the kitchen. So it was my dad coming up with some idea, and then I would offer something, or I always knew what he needed, and I loved assisting in the process. And then when I moved away from home, I started doing stuff like that on my own, or cooking for myself, making things, sketching. I do so many crafts. It's crazy. I just like doing things with my hands, and I like being directly involved in something new being made. And you're right, that is one of the things that draw me into choreography. And then one of the things that deter me from it is the critics and the fear of putting myself out there. All of my the other half of me that is always struggling with anxiety and fear. There's both sides, and sometimes the creative Lauren wins, and sometimes the anxious Lauren wins. But when it feels wonderful.
I'm glad that the creative Lauren is winning. Absolutely.
Thank you.
How has it been creating works on colleagues? How did you find that? And I'm sure your leadership books, which are always great to read, have been helpful.
Yeah. I feel like it's a beautiful thing to create things on your colleagues because you see them the way nobody else can. But it's also very difficult because if you're working with people that know you in a certain way, it's hard to be their boss. Like the power shifts a little bit in the studio. So it's been interesting. I'm realizing that I need to work with and good energies more than talent for me personally, because I'm very sensitive to how people feel, and I'm empathetic. And so if I'm sensitive to somebody else's energy in a negative way, it affects me negatively, and then I can't create the same, or I have trouble. So I like to use dancers that I don't feel are utilized or seen, that I feel like can do greater things than they're given, or dancers that haven't had a shot in a while, or maybe blew their one shot. There's like a great amount of fulfillment that I get in that personally. And then they're usually excited to be there, which creates a positive energy in the room, which helps me out. But I've also worked with colleagues that are, that are older than me, and it's a little bit harder because they have more experience. I was the young kid coming in through the company with the quick rise, and who are you to tell me what to do? So you get all types. And if I don't have a good experience working with a dancer, then I have the ability to not use them again. I don't have to use them again. And I like to keep it positive if I can. I don't create too many problems. I'll just mentally on the inside go, okay, well, this wasn't as positive of an experience as I wanted it to be. Moving on to the next dancer. And I mean, I work with some of the greatest dancers in the world, so I feel very lucky in that sense. I have a bunch of dancers around me who can do anything.
And your work.
It's freeing.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because as you say, you do have this incredible bunch of dancers around you. And through your work, do you have it? I mean, you're only sort of quite young and you're getting started in your choreographic journey. But even at this stage, do you feel like you have something specific that you want to say, or sort of what's your creative process? And I know it might be too early, but how do you find that your choreographic language is beginning to form, if you feel that it is?
Yeah, I don't want a voice yet. I don't think, because I'm in exploratory mode. I love using different music and trying to see how that makes me move differently. I don't have a vocabulary that's unique to me, and I don't know if I want one. I don't want people to look at something and say, "Oh, that's Lauren Lovette's work." I'd rather them just enjoy the show, whatever it is, have it change up, and then look and see if they liked it and say, oh, it's Lauren. I don't want it to be directly recognized. Okay. And maybe that's not a good thing.
But it's your thing.
It's my thing. It keeps me interested. So last fall, mostly I just wanted to make something that was more classically based, because I'd been in the company for a good amount of time, 7 years, and I don't know, I saw the same kind of ballet being made over and over again, with dark lighting and I have a lot of friends that support the ballet. They all would say, we miss real music with the melody, and we miss the orchestra being used to their fullest, and we miss the costumes not getting in the way, and we miss being able to see it, because a lot of our audience members are older and they can't see as well, and if you have a dark ballet, it's very difficult for them. So I mostly just took the information that people were giving me, and I felt very similarly as well, that I missed um, beautiful classical music, and clean costumes, and just ballet. I just missed ballet. And so I decided I wanted to make a ballet. I wanted to make a ballet to Schumann. And I love it. I love that ballet. For Clara, I named it after Clara Schumann. And I had fun researching all about her and Schumann's life. And I found that so moving. And I found a lot of personal elements that connected in my life. And
do you want to give us a quick synopsis for those people who may not know the story?
Yeah, so Clara and Robert, they met when they were very young. Clara was especially young, and under her father's sort of control at the time. She was a very prominent pianist in Germany, and this great prodigy, this amazing talent, and was well known. And her father was sort of driving her in that sense, but she fell in love with Robert Schumann, and Schumann wasn't well known. He was starting up, but he had a lot of failures as a musician. He wasn't as strong, but he was really in the composing side of things, and she really believed in him and just fell madly in love with him. So they really fought to be together. For years they were kept apart. They would see each other only once, maybe not even that, a year. And they fought the courts, and then one day before the battle of the courts they won and their love prevailed. She could have waited one day and then had her own free choice just by being of age, but it didn't matter because it was the principle of it. And they had this incredible life. They had 8 kids, and she gave up a lot of her own ambitions and dreams for him. They had very thin walls, and so in order for Schumann to be able to compose the works that he did, she had to stop playing music. And it's a sad story because it doesn't end well. He went mad, he went crazy, and with a mental illness, and she took care of 8 kids alone as a woman. And she did it as a performer. She played music, and she played a lot of his music, and she made his music great. And I think, I don't know, I was moved by the story.
It's very moving
by Schumann's mind. His mind was interesting to me. It was complex. Like, he doesn't keep one mood in most of his music. It'll be going one way, and it's so pleasant and beautiful and utopian, and then he goes all the way into some dark valley. And I think a lot of us feel that as humans, where we have 2 sides of us, and his was just more prevalent for people to see, and it made beautiful art. And he made this piece. The piece I chose was the last thing he made for Clara. The last really good thing that he made, really, before he died. And it's not a very well-known piece, and there are a lot of musicians out there, scholars, that would say it's not his best work. I don't know that much about music, but I know I was moved by it just without even knowing the story, just listening to it on Spotify. So if I can feel that listening to it on Spotify and then learning what it's all about, I think other people would be moved by it too. And Clara really pushed for this piece of music to be edited and shared. She really wanted it to be known, and Brahms helped her with that. And even still, it never really took off as much as some of his other works did. And so I named my ballet for Clara because I wanted it to be, it's a gift to her. The music was a gift to her, but it's also because I know she wanted it to be known so badly, and it never really did in her lifetime. So that's why I did it.
And I love that. I love that you call it for Clara, because
Yeah.
not only, as you say, it was a gift from him to her, but it almost sounds like the work that you've created is almost a gift to her as well, in telling her story as much as telling his story. Yeah,
It was.
I really like that.
And I showcased two different relationships within the ballet. There's one that's very, what's the word? It's pleasant. It's not predictable, but it's very
traditional.
It's flirtatious a little bit. It's young. It's youthful. And it's full of discovery, that pas de deux. It's very playful and fun, and sort of a different kind of love. And then there's this other relationship that's very turbulent. The music gets very dark, and I know it's the dark part of Schumann's mind that comes out there. The whole ballet just changes 7 minutes in. And that pas de deux, I wanted to show a couple that stays together, that is fighting to make it work, I guess. And it must have been what they felt often, with his mind being as insane as it was, and him actually putting himself in an insane asylum. So it was very interesting.
It's quite a tragic story, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. The ballet ends with one woman standing. And I wanted it starts with a man and it ends with a woman, and I wanted it to be just a freedom. Clara, and at the end, did it on her own. And there's one character that never has a partner the whole time, and they're observing things, and they're sort of this frosting on top of this whole story, this whole cake. And yeah, so it's not a long ballet. It's like 15 minutes, but a lot happens. Maybe too much. It was like years of pent up, not making anything. And I think I tried to put it all on one canvas, and it was just like, the critics were like, no, not good enough. But
wow, you're just getting started.
Yeah.
You're still very young.
Exactly.
You've got a long way to go in your choreographic journey.
Yes.
So I did want to ask you though, as a female dancer, and particularly hearing this, true love story, but quite a tragic story.
Yeah.
At being a female dancer, do you think that has affected or informed in a specific way your approach to choreography, or the choreography that you ultimately presented?
I don't know if being a female gives me a different perspective. I don't know. I mean, it's my perspective, and I'm a female, so it must. But I feel like, at least in most cases, there are two sides to everything. So we're really looking at the same things as humans. So there's no difference. We have all of the same hardships and trials, the same suffering in love and out of love, and with other things in life, family and friends, death. I mean, it's human. It's not gender specific. I think what the challenges that come with doing it as a woman come from a technical view, I think, less from an emotional view, more from a technical view. Like,
what do you mean by technical?
Like partnering would be
okay.
one. And I know a lot of my male friends that choreograph have a hard time with pointe shoes. So it's more of a matter of how you're educated, and what you know is what you can, those are your materials, those are your tools that you can use. And then you create the story from there, what you want to say from there. And that's a human element, human condition. So if you're a person that's been through a lot of things, you're going to have more to say. Not necessarily because you're a man or a woman.
Yeah.
So I think I have some advantages when it comes to point work and female dancing and what feels good. But I also have holes in my training too, where I haven't partnered at all. I don't know how that works. So I'm learning. I'm learning what the man does behind the woman and how strong women can be and how they can do that as well. I just made a ballet for the Vail International Dance Festival.
Yes, how was that?
Not really a ballet, more like a dance piece, more like I guess just a work.
Yeah.
I used spoken word poetry and a Brooklyn-based violinist. And it was a very collaborative experience. It was cool. I started with words that I really wanted to be said. It's sort of a poem about us being a universal species and how we can affect the lives around us and how important that is. And then there's another poem about love, but not love between a man and a woman, but between a woman and a woman. And I feel like that never gets shown in ballet.
Yeah.
And I really wanted it to be real and authentic to that. So because that's what the poet is speaking on. She's speaking about another woman, not a man. So I wanted to show that for real. That was one element. And then there's a whole piece on anxiety and how important it is to not let it rule you, and how the whole point of life is trying to get your elbow, if it touches another person, to stay. And just sort of how important others are in life. So that's a whole segment. And then the last one is about uplifting each other, I guess. Being a part in somebody else's greatness, self-esteem, and how you can charge the people around you and make them feel big, and how they can conquer anything if you do that. And the whole piece was called Angels of the Get Through, which I just love that title. So I had my message and I had my outline, and then I got an amazing composer, Caroline Shaw. She wrote a piece and we put it in, and it wasn't long enough. And so then there were certain sections that were improvised by the violinist based off of what he felt from the words being said. So that was exciting in itself too, because hearing the poet speak and then the violinist play based off of the words was special. And then the dancing was as well. And I used a lot of partnering because we only had women involved. That's all I got. So I wanted there to be lifts, and I wanted there to be turns, and I wanted there to be dancing moments, like real ballet. Yeah. And I also wanted to explore my contemporary side with floor work and moving in a different way that's not point shoes. I put it on flat. So I don't know. I just like to challenge myself in all of the areas just to see what comes out.
It's really interesting that the piece that you're talking about that you created for Vail is almost a complete summary of the discussion that we've had today and the topics that we've covered off, actually. As you were talking about that, I was like, well, but I think that is perhaps because, as you say, it comes from within you, and what we've discussed comes from within you, and your choreography comes from within you.
Yeah, it does.
And you've presented this, and I think that's just beautiful.
Thank you.
It sounds absolutely incredible. I wanted to ask, before we finish, one of my favorite questions of artists is thinking about your journey that you have been through, and others who would be aspiring to have your incredible career. What advice would you give to other dancers who perhaps look up to you and think, that is exactly what I would want?
You have to have the tenacity to never give up, but you also have to work harder than anybody else. So it's not about comparing yourself to other people. It's such a personal journey. You can always go further and harder than you think that you can do, always. But then you have to balance that with who you are as a person as well. So I feel like, at least for me, who I was as a person came first. And then as much work ethic as I could possibly instill in myself came second. Other people are almost last when it comes to comparing and contrasting that. And in the middle, you have to not give up. You have to have that deep understanding that everything's going to be okay, no matter what, that you're going to get through it. So if you can have that anchor that says, no matter what happens to me, I know I'm going to get through it, then you can have really challenging roles. You can fall on stage. You can have injury and surgeries happen. You can get really sick and better again. You can go through almost anything. And then you grow as an artist if you can learn how to turn all of those things into something productive that you can give away. Other people come at the end, and it comes after all of the hardship and the personal discovery and all of that. And then at the very end, it's an offering. It's not a taking. And I feel like with that, you can be successful at most anything you decide to do. If it is ballet, then it's going to be especially hard because you have to keep your head on your shoulders. You can't get lost in the drama. You can't get lost in the competition. You can't get lost in one bad show or the perfectionism of everything. And then you can't lose your soul. You can't lose who you are. You can't lose being a person, or else nobody's going to relate to you on stage. So if you can have all of those things, I think you could be successful.
That is absolutely wonderful advice. And thank you so much for all of your time.
Thank you.
And sharing this wonderful journey with us. I'm excited to see your work as you grow, and I hope to come and see you when I'm in New York, which would be absolutely lovely.
Come.
Yeah, most definitely. Here we are in London for the very first time. There's sunshine.
I was like, wow, it's sunny there.
Honestly, it's like we've had the worst summer, and here I am. I thought I'll keep the blinds open, and I can barely see. So yeah, hopefully it'll come out. But thank you so much for your time. And I just want to say to everyone listening, you can follow Lauren on her socials and definitely check out her Instagram, which is absolutely beautiful. And to find out when she's performing next, either on stage or having her work performed, you can check out with her, but also with the New York City Ballet website. Thanks so much.
Don't forget to subscribe. We've got some incredible interviews coming up with principal ballerinas and renowned choreographers. We love dance and ballet, and we hope you'll love us. Join us on Facebook and Twitter.